Didn't get much sleep last night, so it's going to be a bit of a stream. Let's do it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the stream. Let me share the link around and what have. I am futzing a little bit with the chat output. I'd really like it to be nicer than what it is right now, so let me try to get some styles involved. Okay. Not bad, not great. So we need to get rid of you. What are you? Iron pages. Panel pages. What up, Brian? Okay, that looks right. So now I just need to resize it just a smidge. Perfect. Actually, I could move that over here, so that could be wider. Yep, doing this with OBS. This is now using its browser source mechanism, which you can inject. No. But you can inject. Hey, Nina, welcome back to the stream. You can inject custom CSS into a browser source, so I'm able to style the chat output to look like that. Okay. I got like no sleep last night. Like 1:30 in the morning, some people outside of my apartment got into a fight, and so I did not get any sleep. At least got about half as much sleep as I'd like. So that's why I'm dragging a little bit getting started. Still working a little bit on the benchmarking. Trying to, isolate precisely where things are going. But I'm going to press pause on the benchmarking and move on. Got a couple of things I think we can speed up some of the secondary index. Send kid out. I think we can speed up the secondary indexing a little bit by leveraging batch transactions. And we just need the background indexer to, try not to, it kind of gets scheduled at random times right now, and it would be ideal if it was a little more intelligent about when it schedules the secondary indexer that's asynchronous. But for now, things are in a working state, so there's no point in getting too bogged down in this much longer. Instead, I'm going to clean up the state of the repo here, and then we're going to start working on the citizenry front end. Hey, we get a free commit at the start.
Citizen.
All right. I was listening, watched a little bit of the playback and saw that I'm a little bit loud. So I turned down the gain on my mic a little bit, and I'm going to talk a little bit lower. So hopefully that won't be a problem anymore. But let me know if I'm blowing it out still a little bit. Okay. One thing we did find, I started working with Andrew and Matthias, and we did find a memory leak in the hyperstack. So that was a good find. All right. So, we're going to need a new repo. we'll be copying over some of this stuff, especially all the front end stuff. Nope, don't want to do it like that. Yeesh. Okay, so static and views. Let's copy over bin. Let's copy index. And we're going to need at least a few of the same packages. Let's find out how many. Ah, shoot. Alright. So which of these are we going to need? We'll need AJV, may not need AVA. Probably won't need that. Probably won't need that. Might need config. Will need EJS. Will need Express. Won't need any of the hypers. No reason to think we need these yet. Probably gonna need fetch. Probably will need RPC WebSockets. Yep. Nope. 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 And yeah. No, not init. npm install. So this will need probably some amount of a minimal database, so we actually may still need Hyper-B and what have you. Not entirely sure quite yet how all this will work, but the plan is to have citizenry be a front end that talks to citizen servers. So we're going to need to figure out precisely how to do that. So, part of the question will be like, how do we retain state? Do we create user records for everybody? Things like that. Because, we could use like local storage, but, well, maybe we could use local storage. Local storage tends to be capped at like 100 megs, something like that, maybe more. But if we're using local storage, it would be only to kind of maintain sessions that you have or accounts that you have with multiple different servers. Citizenry ideally would be nothing more than a front end that's talking to the various servers. It'll have a little bit of opinion, but ideally not a lot. So for the... No, it's not the only... The idea, part of the reason that we're separating front end from back end, this would be a good time to pull back out Excalibur. So, can I like save this for later or something? Oh, that's neat. So you got over here servers. And one choice that we could make that would be, unintuitive choice would be to have the servers host their own front ends. Each of them. And those front ends would be the citizen, application, and then each server can customize that however they see fit. That's basically how, like, ActivityPub and Mastodon work, right? But we're thinking instead, and this is, after talking to folks on the chat and talking with folks involved, we're thinking instead that you'll have applications which are separate. And so the primary way that you'll interact with the server is by talking to the applications, right? And they're not talking to the front ends, they're talking to the back ends. So you all get the idea. That said, I also think that the servers ought to maintain their own front ends. And I'm somewhat keen to let that front end of the servers evolve into really sort of a CMS. Maybe kind of thinking like WordPress. Because then you're able to have, different organizations and communities can have their own kind of custom front end for whatever they need. Like, think like a media outlet that wants to be publishing on the Citizen network. So they would have their own front end, and then these applications are acting as aggregators and giving a consistent experience for like the kind of social media bit. But then custom front ends are still possible for the servers. So what we're going to be doing right now is producing just citizenry.com, which will just be one of potentially many front ends, or one of many possible applications. And it's going to talk to these guys. And ideally, it would be the Citizen front end talking to them, so that the Citizenry front end talking to them, so that we don't have to be proxying a bunch of traffic through the citizenry.com server. In fact, if it can't do that, then this idea is kind of screwed. Should be possible so long as the cores is set correctly on these servers. We just need to be able to establish WebSocket connections to each of them. And then it's really just a question of maintaining information about the user when they revisit citizenry.com so that they can quickly resume their sessions. Again, ideally that would all be in local storage. Of course, the downside of that is, it kind of can't be. Citizenry.com kind of needs to maintain... I guess it sort of depends. It depends on what the sign-in flow and things are like. Because it could be that the login flow feels a lot like logging in for the first time on a new device. And if you only need to log into one server, then that works fine. So applications are developers who are building, like I'm suggesting, hopefully purely front-end applications, if we can make that architecture work. At voila. In which case, they are just using the WebSocket API to talk to whatever server the user logs into. And we may need to do some kind of sign-in flow where you go to this kind of single sign-in. What is the role of the citizen? So these are the servers are citizen instances. Does that make sense? And then this is citizenry.com, so two different repos. Does that part make sense? And so to set this up, I originally had these. No problem. I think I get what you're saying. So to set these up, originally I had the front end on Citizen, and now I'm moving it over to Citizen Re. And eventually, there will be some kind of Citizen front end. Yeah, there will be some kind of Citizen front end. At first, there'll be some kind of vanilla thing that does whatever kind of basic things are needed, perhaps like the single sign-on. And then over time, I would like for the Citizen nodes to be able to have custom front ends that the communities can set. Well, hopefully, Corey, what will end up happening is that Citizen will get to be such a usable state that it's no more complicated to use than like WordPress. If you're setting up a Citizen node, and if you're setting up just a user account, it should feel no more difficult than Twitter. So Ryan says, then the server front end will also allow for social interaction. May also allow some instance-specific content. That's the idea. You probably, if you wanted to have social interactions on the server instance, you definitely could. It's a little tricky because it's like if you're doing it for any user other than users that are members of your server, you have to do a lot of the same work that like CTZNRE.com is doing. So it's doable. Largely, I would just think of the front end as being, something a little more generic. But like, it'd be interesting if like the front end could leverage the citizen activity to group like a comment section. So if the instances have their own front ends, to give an example, it would be like NewYorkTimes.com. Let's say NewYorkTimes.com is a citizen server, and this is their custom front end, right? Because they have all this content that they create. But they're also posting on the Citizen network, and they have a bunch of, reporters and what have you that have basically citizen accounts on that server. So then the equivalent of Citizen Re would be Twitter. And the Citizen Re would be able to read data off of the New York Times server. I do enjoy conceptual UIs. So, Nina, did that make sense? That this is like the New York Times front end and this is like the Twitter front end? Cool. What would the citizen front end feel like? That'll be part of what we are answering today. I had a GIF that I put up. Right here. Yeesh. Quality is real low. But this is a GIF of where the Citizen Re front end is roughly right now, so very Twitter-like. Very hard to see in this GIF. The colors got really washed out. We'll see it soon in a second. Yeah. You bet, Corey. So yeah, the Citizen front end will feel kind of like a normal social network. And we're So let's dig in, eh? So let's see. Start test is out. Don't need any of these. Okay, let's see what happens when I try to start it. Need to set the type as a module. Let's also copy over the get ignore. Oh, it's dependencies, not packages. Okay. So this thing was cooked to try to establish a connection to the backend right away. Of course, it's failing to do so. Let me get myself a soda, one sec. So without a session, without let's map out our routes. You're gonna have home. You're gonna have notifications. So you got a lot over here. Schemas is not a thing. No, not in here anyway. I think I'm going to get rid of the profile route. So that's that. Then we have domain, and then we have username at domain. So this would be a server view. This would be a individual user view. Then you have the individual records. We might want to put the individual records under some kind of namespace, perhaps. That seems about right. That seems about right. So these three right here, possibly also search. Maybe not search. Yeah. I don't know about search. That'll be an interesting question. But these three right here work anonymous or signed in, as well as the, of course, all of these. So basically all of these do except for notifications. And then, the root would change. And these three, regardless of whether or not you have a session, you're going to be creating a WebSocket to that domain to access the data. And actually, we probably need to go ahead and get the HTTP GET stuff going, because using a WebSocket to get content is bad for caching, so we really don't want to do it that way. So the headline here is really that just about any page needs to work without any kind of session going. These three will need to be able to establish a connection. No, you're not going to be opening up a WebSocket that's going to HTTP get that content. So that means that we're not creating WebSockets unless you have a session. So that logic needs to be altered. Let's bring over this roll-up stuff. And we need to bring over some of the package commands and the scripts. And there was this watch config we need. Okay, so now we got our front end watch build going. And all this. That's the stuff that's gotta be modified. Okay. I'm going to assume that we can use local storage for sessions. There's no reason to think we can't. since it's failing. Okay. So far, so good. We might actually want to turn session into a singleton. That might actually be wise. Yeah. I'm doing that. Okay, so that means... And the upside of that is then we don't have to thread it through like all of our components. It's just global state. Okay, so then all the places we were passing profile into things we can remove. Same with API, which is very convenient. And now our header code is the next to be updated. And we'll have it import this session. Okay, that's working correctly now. So in email is the only one that has the form that we use, right? Citizen is now going to be doing the same thing. So it's not quite right to call it a username. It's really more of an address. On email, we call that an email address. So on Citizen, is it called a citizen address? What's your citizen? Seems right. Your passport. Appreciate the logic to that. But passport makes me think like Microsoft Enterprise. Yeah, I mean, I'm not harshing. Coming up with terms like this, it's there are no bad ideas in the brainstorm. I'm never harshing on that kind of thing. It's hard. Something else we got to think about here. Is, I'm going to do it at first where you just enter the password here, but you don't really want to be typing in the password into citizenry. You eventually are going to want to do a single sign-on flow. Your citizen ID. Could go like really kind of like punk with it. Like that. The all caps thing. That is a little user hostile, I think. Let's just stick with your address for the moment. Yeah, so multiple apps is the idea here. This is, despite what it says up there, the citizenry.com, which is a domain name that we registered earlier in the stream. So citizenry.com will be the app that we're kicking off to multiple different citizen servers. Okay. So I'm going to start a citizen instance. Yeah. Well, so if you change your application, you'll be reusing your server and reusing the data as well. Now, they may use different data sets, but it'd be accessing the same database. Yeah. Okay, so on submit, we're going to change username to user ID. And and I actually need to nuke this and then create a temporary user. Okay. Now let's see if this works. Not gonna do anything. Let's see. Okay, at least give us an error there. Connection refused. And I imagine that has to do with cores. So, WebSocket cores. Oh, no. Huh, let's see about cross origin. Huh. So cross-origin WebSockets are allowed by default? So then why are we getting a connection refused? Localhost 3000. Ah, that's on the wrong port. What is that about? Let's see. Maybe it's because I need to update this one. I didn't know that. you ignoring my port? Ah, that's why. So we need to turn off debug mode. What effects do debug mode have right now? Ah, just to do fixed ports. Okay, we should use that to our advantage then. So it's using port 15,001. Huh. Well, that's rather handy. Okay, still saying connection refused. Because I forgot to start this back up. There we go. Sweet. Accounts.login, username and password. Got it. Actually, should have been seeing this throw. Why are we not seeing this thing throw? There we go. Good. Great. Good stuff. So then we should be able to, let's factor out the Whoops. Okay, that needs to be stringified. Is it possible to just export the API item? Okay, that's line. Okay, so it's failing to resume the API session because a method is not found, which I assume is that. Okay, so that worked correctly, which means we should be establishing a WebSocket. We are. So API is not a function. Let's check into that. That's in the login, probably in the header code. Let's see if I am correct that I don't need to export that as a function. Okay. Hey, Stefan, welcome back to the stream. So why is session.isActive returning false? That's an interesting question. Okay. I was definitely concerned about that. So I need to in the session, so this needs to listen to the state change. So we'll do Okay, making progress. So now this stuff profile, all that stuff needs to change. Let's export this as info. Okay, there we go. So, Stefan, we are working on a working on the citizenry.com front end. We're separating applications, so you have citizen servers and citizen applications. And our first citizen application is citizenry.com, and that's what we're working on right here. And it's connecting to separate citizen servers, and basically, if we're lucky, it will all just be a front-end app, which so far seems to be so good. I just do not know my Vim well enough. I'm better with Emacs. And even then, I'm just okay. Okay. So I should now be able to load my avatar by doing session.info.url. Close. There we go. Probably ought to have the server say what the avatar URL is, but for now we're going to assume it's where I put it. Okay. Well, shouldn't have too hard of a time. Catching up. Just give it the old 2x. The streams last weekend were maybe a little more interesting because they were distributed indexing stuff, and then we got into like performance improvements, and that probably was a little bit of a tedious watch. Let's get do log out done real quick. Or is it remove item? Let's remove item. I'm glad you like the front end work. Everybody's got something different. Okay, so now that can be session.doLogout. Okay. Can't read domain of null. That's in. Ah. Quick bathroom break. BRB. Okay, let's finish our login flow. Okay, let's see if we can't get the front page working. Yeah, it really depends, you know, person to person, how people feel about UI work or back-end work. I do both, and they have their strengths and weaknesses, to be sure. Like, one thing that's nice about back-end work is it's way easier to do automated testing. And the code kind of tends to be, in some ways, honestly, I think back-end code gets complex at a slower pace than front-end work. Back-end work definitely gets complex, don't get me wrong, but UI work gets complex kind of fast. The interplay of state. But like you say, UI work shows instant results, and it's more of a creative experience. So there's a lot of trade-offs. Playing with the idea of using a prompt that kind of pushes people in certain ways, but that may be a bit much. More fun than boring CRUD functions. Yeah, I mean, that's a problem you're going to have no matter what you're building, really. Like if you're doing CRUD, front end versus back end ain't gonna save you. It's gonna suck either way. I would argue that I have structured a lot of my life to make sure I don't do boring work. At the cost of pretty much anything that looks like money or money. It's not cheap to do interesting work. I may just stick with the term post and comment, kind of keep it dry. I know it is very dry, but everything else just feels a little try-hard these days. Like, Twitter in the context for that branding was when the kind of everything was playful and, hey, let's call it Twitter and tweets. Aren't we all so goofy and Silicon Valley style? And now it feels like that's not an interesting thing to... It's called a woof. Now it kind of feels more like being dry and, post is just, just kind of may not need any more gilding. It doesn't mean that branding or, you know, thoughtfulness about the terms you use doesn't come into play. It obviously does. It's just a, hey, Lars, welcome back to the stream. But yeah, it's just a little bit different than before. Like Citizen, I don't think would have been a very good name back when Twitter started, but now I like it. Taste's got to change. Going good. We are now working on a front end that is separated from the, you know, an application that's separated from the server. So citizenread.com, which will run and can talk to multiple different, yeah. And it's going pretty well so far. Let's see if we have a feed. No. We're not compiling. Yeah, it's kind of... I have this thing that I say sometimes, which is it's not social, it's society. That's kind of where the mentality of the term citizen came from. Yeah. I would imagine once upon a time people built it so people liked it and used it, and once they did it, Twitter became important. I remember pretty well the context around which Twitter became popular. Like, I remember seeing it, you know, when it was still in its really grimy early days. Yeah, it definitely wasn't super interesting. It wasn't interesting. I don't know if y'all remember. I'm sure once I say it, everybody will remember, but Twitter was a kind of a nothing thing up until South by Southwest. And then they had that play that ended up launching them into hip status, which was, they managed to, God knows how they got this deal, a VC connection or something, but they managed to get all over South by a bunch of TVs, you know, flat screens all over the place that was live streaming tweets that I think had the hashtag for South by. Oh, you were there? So, Ryan, I wasn't there for it. And so my perception of it is entirely a received story, which was that it turned it into a notable thing, but at least in the crowd you were running with it, nobody was feeling it. I remember that being a pretty novel idea at the time, like, oh wow, everybody's kind of like live streaming thoughts about what's going on, you know. And that was like back when South by was all about trying to get into the cool parties. Boy, South by did not maintain that. Then there was like really sad attempts to pull a Twitter again at the subsequent South bys. I forget what company did it immediately after, but there was some really, maybe it was like Foursquare or something like that. Tried to do the exact same thing, and that one fell totally flat. What were they confused about? Felt like texting strangers. Yeah, I mean, it had that problem for a long time of, like, nobody knowing what to tweet. And then, there's a really good... I'm going to share this with y'all. This is one of the best pieces I've ever read. I've shared it many times with people, so apologies if I've shared this with you before. But this post by Eugene Wei called Status as a Service is super long. Super long. Look at this thing. And I think the whole thing is so good. I thought it was one of the most interesting looks at the dynamics of social networks. And one of the things that he points to about helping Twitter kind of find its niche was the introduction of Favstar and Favored, which he called leaderboards. He calls them leaderboards, and kind of helped shape the game of Twitter a little bit. To become, to get your tweets to go viral. Well, I'll share this link because I thought this was just such a good read. Back when we didn't know how much power would be in the centralized servers, there was a period, I don't know if you'll recall, but at this period here, it was like, I think people were still expecting services like Twitter to kind of turn into utilities, and that there was this idea of mashups were a really big deal, where you were taking a bunch of APIs from a bunch of different services and trying to build something kind of that merged them together. There was still energy around like indie web stuff. 2007 was also back when you could text people for question and answers. Actually, somebody I know who is in this space, DC Posh, recently made money with a kind of a similar service, but modernized for like people that manage properties and have to field a lot of questions. So, what is old is new again. Let's see if we got posting working. Cool. Let's get that avatar rendering right. Cool. Oh, did I just crash the server? No, what's going on? Why did it just switch to... Huh. Yeah, I don't know if Moxie's the only one responsible for that change in mindset, but he's certainly, a big part of it. Interpersonal stuff, like the Facebook use case, quote unquote, that's all texting now. And if you think about it, like Signal, iMessage, you got a real clear sense about who you're sharing with. It's high context. The group chat, and it can do media now more conveniently than it's easier to share a meme with friends by text now than it is to use something like Facebook. So somebody was saying in my Twitter replies earlier that Facebook lucked out. If they hadn't found groups, they'd be completely dead right now. And I think that's totally accurate. The use case of posting updates on your feed, nah, that's out. That's totally replaced by group texts. Honestly, Facebook would be smart to just ditch it, but there ain't a lot that Facebook can do right these days. Oh, I'm on... How did that happen? Okay, I accidentally just went to the dev1.localhost. So we need to... That's why, okay. Post that URL. It's going to be an interesting one to answer. Facebook was experimenting with some really cool stuff last year. Everybody can have a room that people can just step into and say hi. The OIRC. Oculus Social is cool too. If only it wasn't Facebook. Isn't that such a bastard? Okay, why can't I click through to these? Don't know what's happening there. Okay. I'm almost tempted to get an Oculus, one of the Go's, just so I could get the exercise going. That seems like such a great use case for it right now. Only problem is my downstairs neighbors might hate me. Me jumping around. So then you got to go out into the courtyard and do it. Can you imagine being in public doing VR exercise? Curious if they're going to get split up. Something's going to happen to them. Split up is the kind of simplest thing to do. There's a lot of political will towards some actions taken against the big tech. And coming up with something to do to Facebook that's more than just splitting up those properties is super hard. Doesn't mean it won't happen, but then it ends up becoming much more nuanced, whereas splitting them up is just like, oh yeah, just split them up. So I think it's a idea of a digital home is good. Yeah, I agree. We're thinking about, since we're just chatting here, one of the things we're thinking about doing is kind of taking the WordPress model with Citizen, where the Citizen core team funds itself by setting up something similar to WordPress.org, where we can handle the server admin part for you and just kind of like do like Citizen as a service, so that you can set up your own Citizen servers very conveniently without having to get into a VPS or anything. And if we could do that, then you know, it would be very, very easy to set up a Citizen server. We would just be kind of acting as a small manager in between like AWS and you, and then hopefully someday could get off of AWS. And then along with that, we're also thinking about how we can help Citizen server admins monetize, which might be off of having users pay in like a free tier, paid tier model. Optionally, people could pay for additional homes that are more like businesses, advertisement pubs, public hand, brought to you by X Business. Yeah, I mean, the idea for why you would set up a Citizen server, it could be because you want to have just a private one that you control. It could be because you're setting up a community of some kind and you want to have a kind of a server specifically for that. This is kind of what I was getting at, like with New York Times having one. That'd be the kind of property or the kind of organization that you would want to adopt this model. They have all their editors with their own accounts on New York Times, so it'd be Bob at NewYorkTimes.com. Yeah, the friendly installer distro, that's obviously a target, right? Like what I was just talking about is the idea of us doing, you know, a citizen.org, you know, setting up a service, Citizen as a service, where we spin up the instances for you. But the self-deploy should be very simple. And right now, so far so good, because right now it's just an npm install -g citizen, and then you run it, and there's a little bit of minimal config. So if we can maintain that, you know, that'd be great. Obviously, it'll get a little more complicated as you get things like caching layers involved, because then you're going to have whatever program does the caching. And then it'll get more complex when we have to start doing a hyperspace cluster to scale up the server and so on. But Yeah, I mean, in my ideal world, everybody would have physical servers that they run in their homes and their offices. But that's constrained immensely by the hardware reality, which I just don't have control over. Hardware and also how ISPs operate. Plus, the way that citizen servers operate, they're servers. So you need to have a public IP address that's fixed that a DNS can route to. Now, we may be able to adjust that over time by getting the P2P layer more involved with the RPC connectivity, but anyway, the hardware is enough of a blocker that that's not worth prioritizing. Okay, votes don't work yet. In fact, it seems like clicking on clicks are just broken for some reason. Okay, let's get the profile page in working order. I'm encouraged so far by how simple this has been to separate the front end. I was expecting this to be a lot more pain. All this stuff is going to need to change because we should not be doing fetches against the API. Or if we do, it should only be if you have theoretically, real-life towns could run a server for the whole town, public infrastructure, taxes paid to running it. Love that idea. Especially if we get rehoming working as cleanly as it should. You know, where you're able to change your instance. So if you move to a new town, you just switch over to your town's, your city's citizen. That'd be really cool. I love that idea. I mean, one of the things we're talking about, me and Matthias and Andrew, is like, how are we going to do the, rehoming? It seems like an elegant word for that. One of the things we were talking through lately is at the outset, how do we explain to people during the sign-up process what the difference is between choosing one server over another. And we'll get more into this when we get maybe a short description about like the vibe of it. And so then whenever you're doing sign up, it's kind of like when you're first playing World of Warcraft and you're choosing between the Alliance and the Horde, you know, like it's like choosing a team or a vibe. To kind of try to get that server selection process into a place that doesn't feel like here's a list of domain names, pick one, LOL, you know. It should feel a little bit more like, you know, kind of an interesting mechanic. We were even talking about how it would be fun to create like a sorting hat, like the houses of Hogwarts, where maybe you like answer a couple of questions and it recommends one of the servers for you. That's another idea I really like. People talking about libraries being used as data providers. There's so much that works about that idea. Libraries being, you know, definitionally homes of information. They have a lot of infrastructure in place that if you just start to tool up their, you know, sysadmin, their sort of ops teams, it's not an extremely costly investment compared to the amount of money and infrastructure already in place around libraries. I think it would be a pretty incredible idea. Also like the civic mindedness of that approach. Plus, you know, libraries already have that kind of ethos. It's like they're practically a Hippocratic oath. I don't know exactly how it may even be legally enforced, but the whole thing about not revealing what books people are checking out. That's the kind of vibe you ought to be getting for data providers. If you want to reestablish trust around privacy. Yeah, the library isn't going to, ideally, we'd be able to confidently say that the libraries aren't going to sell your private data. Yeah, I would. So CS says you could set the tone at the beginning by running 4 different vibe servers myself. The others key off that and roll with it. Might do that, but I would actually really like to. What I'm actually sort of thinking is if we go forward with this WordPress.org approach, that it would be us setting it up, but like in partnership with the like actual owners. Because I don't want to be the admin of any of these servers. Like, I don't want to be involved in the moderation, and I don't want to be involved in the, as much as possible, I would want to be just acting as, like an ops for hire on behalf of whoever's running those things. Both to match the goal of the project, but also to reduce my workload. So I'm hoping that we can find for those initial servers a group of people who are interested in taking on ownership of those servers, and if we're able to solve the economics correctly, they should be business opportunities for people. So I don't know, we'll see what's going down. I'd personally enjoy if the Citizen servers would live on your device on localhost primarily. Of course, you can connect to such servers running on people's devices if you wanted, but I prefer that perspective. Yeah, the only thing that runs counter to that possibility is the need for, the DNS IDs, and they need to be able to resolve to an endpoint, a public endpoint to do RPC or HTTP GET requests. But there should be opportunities on that front, because that's what the Hypercore data mesh is meant to enable. So eventually, I think that would be a possibility. So it says, I actually like the way Movim XMPP did it. They just set up servers for different countries and regions. That would make sense. What about hyperdrive addresses and bookmark pet names? I'm not a big fan of pet name approaches. If a name isn't, it comes down to context of how the identifiers get used. Etsy hosts has a very clear context to the people that use Etsy hosts. It's effectively a pet names book. And, the people that use it understand that they don't put something in Etsy hosts and everybody gets that name. It doesn't get distributed. In a social networking context, I've found I'm not super convinced, because people tend to think about internet media as having global names. So I think you end up paying a coordination cost that's higher than the benefit you get out of not using DNS. The DNS part is actually not the hugest problem, to be honest. You could use a DNS TXT record. So really what it would come down to is just being able to reach the server if it's not publicly hosted. Yeah, Seropath, I've spent a lot of time futzing with these different schemes, like a lot of time. And I've just never walked away super convinced it would be great. If your names, if within a context, within a namespace, so to speak, if they're not global, then you're doing search, which is sort of what you're suggesting. And it might work. But that's not, the system's flexible. It'll change over time. Maybe somebody could try it and they'll find it works. But I'm skeptical by default. But if you could make something that's effectively search be effective at accomplishing the lookup, then yeah, possibly. But even then, like, part of the design that we're doing here is using the DNS IDs and the hyper URLs as a kind of an interplay with each other, so that you can do rehoming if you're changing your DNS ID, or key rotation if you have to change your hyper URL. And it really helps that they're both strict, that they're not search space, but they're actually direct mappings. SSB name resolution is really cool, but it's also leaky by default. Also kind of confusing about how it works. Agree on all points. SSP people just ended up making multiple accounts to avoid sharing too much across spheres. That's may be something that you still want to do even in Citizen. People need different identities. For me personally, my identity gets segmented by which application. So my Reddit identity, my Hacker News identity, my Twitter identity, they're all very different. I generally try not to share my Reddit identity. It wouldn't be terribly embarrassing, but that's an example of where I try to keep some separation. Listening to the most recent Tool album again for the first time in a while. It's really not that bad. It wasn't amazing, but it's also like not bad. So unapologetic. The vibe is very different, I feel, from especially as compared to like his most recent Perfect Circle album, which was all about current year. That one felt way too angsty. There were things I really liked about that. What was it called? Eat the Elephant. I thought Eat the Elephant had some good ideas in it, but golly, it was so angsty. Fear Inoculum, the most recent Tool album, is very, very, very chill. It's kind of like, it's perfect kind of background music. I really enjoy it for that. But it also made it, as a result, it kind of felt unimpressive on first listen. Yeah. So this should, this is an example of a route that actually needs to be using the HTTP endpoints when possible, but we're not going to worry about that yet. Let's take a look at the state of this one. Okay. This may be interesting. Curious whether or not it's going to allow us to load an image from another origin into the canvas like I'm trying to do. If it doesn't, actually, it's not a huge loss. Can work around that. Yeah, in a way, I feel like tools kind of changed with my tastes now. Like, I still love lateralis, but part of me is kind of like, I'm not in college anymore. I'm past the kind of like deep thoughts vibe that lateralis had. As damn good as it is, I'm just latest tool actually reminding me of high school. I can kind of. Oh well, I mean, it's the new metal that is way out of not in vogue anymore. Um, but it's still kind of different than their earlier stuff. It's dad rock sounds like the perfect description of fair inoculum. Like I think about like 10,000 Days, which is great, but it has that big track that's about the guy that's lost his mind, and it's like, that's not dad rock. That's a little too try hard. It's not bad. It's just not. Anyway, regarding separate accounts, a user is not the same as an account. It should just be assumed that we can't truly model users. We model their mechs that they climb into. Yeah. I don't know if our design needs to kind of think of account versus user wholly separately in that regard. Like, I don't know if one account needs to have multiple users. I think they could just be separate accounts. I don't think there's anything in the system that needs to be built to define the inner link. Yeah, maybe we may want to add that in the future, but at this point, I don't see any pressing need for it. I do actually need to pass that in. Okay, this actually may all be okay. We'll see if it allows the canvas to load the way that I'm trying to do. I kind of doubt it. Okay. Oh. No, yeah, there it is. What's the dealio? Oh, that's the dealio. Okay. It appears it is allowing me to load up the image across origin. That's good. Ah, there we go. I knew there would be a tainted canvas in there somewhere. Okay. Well, it's actually not super duper important that we do it this way. I've noticed that you don't use TypeScript even for complex projects like this. Why not? Well, I don't want to add any more typing because I already do so much on the keyboard. No, so the reason is I try as much as possible to avoid, that was a really pretty bad joke. I try as much as possible to avoid transpilation or even any kind of build step whatsoever. Unfortunately, I can't avoid that with ES modules at the moment. But even like context switches that TypeScript requires, I don't love. All that said, yeah, it just introduces some complexity. I might be less bothered by it if, like, JavaScript could import TypeScript natively without a transpile, which I would really appreciate. That said, what I will do on occasion is use JSDoc, which the TypeScript compiler supports. And you can feed JavaScript with JSDoc annotations into the TypeScript compiler, and it will help you to the extent that JSDoc supports. And when there's a couple of reasons I really like that. One of the ways that I tend to think about tooling like types is that until your project reaches, I think about this about everything in terms of like tooling in code bases, like frameworks or things like that. There's this kind of, I guess, this set of ranges where like the complexity of the program itself is too low to yield any benefit from the tool, like TypeScript, right? At which point, using TypeScript is just introducing overhead. It's got like a fixed cost overhead, that TypeScript. So you got your fixed cost overhead of TypeScript, and you have a simple project here. Your project grows in complexity. Eventually it hits the point where its complexity is equal to the cost of that fixed cost of using TypeScript. From there, as the project gets more complex, that cost is now underneath the complexity, and it becomes worth it to use TypeScript. Does that sort of make sense? Now the thing about TypeScript is that migrating over to it, all told, significantly easier than many other similar tools. You could just rename it TS and you're kind of good to go. So not bad. But the JSDoc is even simpler because, you know, the best tooling to help you manage a complexity as it grows is the kind that you can introduce once you're sure that your program complexity is going to be affected by it. So with TypeScript, it's relatively easy. Just renamed it .ts. With something like using Haskell or Elm, like a purely functional language, that's a major refactor, right? So there's a huge upfront cost to changing after the fact. You might as well be starting from scratch. That's a major problem, I think, for that kind of a solution for improving or reducing bugs and complexity. The JSDoc approach has the by far smallest adoption post code base existence adoption, because you just start adding your JSDoc annotations, and basically most of the environment doesn't change at all. It's just new comments, and then if somebody, wants to run the TypeScript compiler against it, they can, but if they don't want to, they don't have to. So that is, in many ways, I consider to be a really ideal solution. And then if you got to a certain point and you realize that like even JS doc is not enough, which it does, it's not nearly as featureful as TypeScript, you could take the next step into TypeScript. So it's kind of like I'm not actually against TypeScript, I just use it through JS doc annotations, and I only do that whenever I feel like I'm going to get a benefit. Usually I don't start to excuse me, introduce those JS doc annotations until I start to get into a space of having complex object shapes being passed around through pipelines. The Citizen indexer is starting to get into that territory a little bit. The kind of thing where like you change the shape of an object or the type signature in some way and you subtly break something that's in some other part of the code base. That's when I will start to get into it. But we're not quite there yet with Citizen. And then like on the front end, really questionable whether or not you're going to get a lot of benefit. Now, you know, I guess with actual TypeScript, you got the .d.ts, and so you can actually kind of share your definitions from the front end and the back end. Not bad to have, but I don't usually find that like the front end part of it benefits immensely, personally. Usually it's if I just have complex single programs, and I kind of think of the front end and the back end as two separate programs. So that's probably more information than needed, but the JS doc thing is my favorite underknown feature of TypeScript. Every time I mention it to people, I evangelize it all the time, and every time people are like, oh, I didn't know that. And I'm like, yeah, check it out. It's very cool. Real handy. Okay, so this .image. Okay. So some ways I think that the engineering of programming is actually better thought of in terms of like actually almost like a business practice rather than a sort of engineering practice. Because like what I was just talking about with like the kind of cost benefit stuff, it's kind of business thinking. And if you think about like complexity or the need to implement a feature and what it would cost to get done, things like that. There's a lot of ways that I feel like thinking in terms of the business, even if you're not doing an actual business, but like if you think about your team almost as like operating as a little business, I think that mentality actually works better. That's right. There we go. Okay. I like how Elixir does things, function overloading based on different inputs, bunch more cool stuff. Nope, not you. Elixir is a great language. Okay, totally working. create some more test users real fast. I think I actually made myself a utility for this. Yeah, sadly I don't think I will ever be in a context where I can use Elixir. But I really like it as a language. Okay, why did following do nothing? Kind of looks like our secondary indexes are broken. Say it isn't so. I'm shocked to my core. I'm trying to speak at a little bit more of a lower volume. I hope that's working for y'all. Like I said earlier, I listened to the playback and realized I'm kind of talking more loudly than I need to. Talking like I'm talking to somebody 5 miles away. Plus, at this volume, the streams are way easier to fall asleep to. Which I do all the time, watching game streamers. I watch Jorbs play Slay the Spire a lot. That guy puts me right to bed. In a good way. Okay. So our followers index is definitely broken. Did I leave everything in a good state? Can't just switch the current one to that? Okay. Need some more profiles so I can differentiate my workspaces a little better. Ooh, that red on green. That is horrible. I wonder if I could choose something a little better. Light blue might be smarter. Okay. Well, no idea why the secondary index is broken. I'll have to get into that. So threads are next. Gonna hit the loo real quick. Really, I'm quite happy about how easily it's been to switch the front end to a separate instance. That's great news. We're going to think about how the APIs are defined. Right now they're very semantically tied. Like it's stuff like api.post.get, you know, get thread, things like that. Which is fine. But that's running on top of like the schemas, which are very well defined like that, with the machine readable schemas and things like that. And if we have APIs that are like this, we're going to need to spec those as well. And it's going to be a little bit of a coordination problem, because if the APIs aren't super generic, then your calls are going to fail if the client is on a different API version than the server. So I'm kind of wondering if the API ought to be a generic database API. We'll have to engage in that probably after the testnet. Maybe even after we launch. You gotta balance the quality of it versus the timeliness. I think people really do want to get this stuff going. The time is very much right now for something like CTZN. So it looks like all of our secondary indexes are broken right now. I wonder if restarting the server would affect that. I'm intrigued to be sure. Because our tests pass. Unless I broke the test recently. Oh. I broke all of our... Huh. You know, a good way to find out where I broke it? Uh-oh, y'all. I got a random reason to commit. Hot damn.
CTZN.
Okay, let's find out where I broke the tests. Apparently a long time ago. Okay, now I'm skeptical that I've been running the tests as we go, so I'm pretty confused by this, to be honest. I'm also not sure that I'm... Yeah, okay. Okay, now I'm skeptical that the tests are even working correctly. I am pretty confused. I mean, let's see, today's Tuesday. All through Monday, we were running, making sure we weren't breaking anything. Something is off. Well, I guess there's only one thing to do, and that's to dig into the code and see what's broken. Let's start with the follows index, which is a little more straightforward than some of the others. And so we'll start by seeing what happens when we fetch follower IDs. I'm pretty keen to find out what's going on here. It's an interesting, somewhat surprising bug. Really somewhat surprised. I have run tests as we go for quite some time. Huh. Don't you love it when async just... Oh, okay, no, it's showing up. That's a lot of undefined. Right on, right on. Welcome back. So there's the public server getting called for a chance to sync. And then, like, not finishing. Not doing anything as far as I can tell. Is it possible that this is doing something funky? Should bring enough chocolate cake for the class. I'm all taken care of, but thank you. I got family in town, so my terrible bachelor diet is not causing any problems. I'm very lucky. Okay, so I found one of the problems, but apparently not all the problems. It's very nice of you to suggest, Sol, but I would never accept such a gift. Besides, I need to know how stuff runs when you don't have the magical M1. But as I believe I said on the stream, Matthias got one and he's really been rubbing it in my face. The other thing is I feel guilty about the tech waste. I got a perfectly fine laptop. I can't be. Okay. What is going on here? Yeah, logging the object to help you use the key name to tell what you're logging. Use that pretty often, it's very helpful. Why would an index not know its database? Oh, because I'm actually in a database, not an index. Ready of undefined. Okay. Log has now gotten so noisy I can't tell what I'm looking at anymore, so I need to clean it up a little. So it's actually indexing the various events, but is interested in is coming back false for some reason. Whoa. What is that? All of our keys got reversed somehow? What? Look at that. All of our keys got reversed. Is that me or is that Hyper-V? I have a sneaking suspicion it's actually Hyper-V because that would explain why it's suddenly breaking even when I go back through the history. Huh. Let's see if Hyper-V had any changes recently. I'm suspicious. Let's try pinning to Hyper-V 150. Yep, it's not us. Upstream got us. Yeah, well, have to let them know. Uh-oh. What happened there? Bugs in the minor updates. It's a crime. Now, why does it say it's got 0 member users? Did I delete my... What happened to my users? Huh. Even more mysteries. I choose to blame Matthias for that one too. I have no reason to blame him, but I bet it was him. Okay, let's see if that fixes our secondary indexes. Yep. Back in business. It was a fun little diversion. What the heck were we doing? Okay. Looking good here. Gotta figure out why clicking on those still doesn't work. One last thing to check, and that's notifications. And if notifications are working, we have our first citizen recommit. Okay, let's see what we got. Okay. Sign in as some of the other users. Okay, we're gonna get notifications here. What do you say? Couple of issues. Pagination ain't working right. So let's find out why that is. So after seems to be giving us the wrong sub results. It seems to be doing a greater than or equal rather than just greater. Yeah, it's continuously giving us the same one. Okay. It's a problem in the Citizen API, so let's take a look. That's why. That should be less than, not less than or equal. Okay, fix that. Good, 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 good. Making progress. And the plus side, you know what that means.
Citizen.
Alright, let's fix that notification rendering real quick. Uh-oh. Ah, I'm back on the wrong... No, am I on the right server? I am. How did it just break again? How did that re-break? Huh. That's bizarre. It's correct on the first query, but not subsequent queries? How does that happen? I wonder if that's why. Yeah. Not sure we can do this the way that it's designed right now. I have to come back to that one, because that's a tricky one. Basically, I'm trying to use this monotonic lexicographic timestamp to translate the after encoding into the correct key encoding, except the way that's designed, the monotonic part of it will cause invocations that are near each other. Well, actually, I can just do this. Just need to only run it once. That didn't fix it. Still doing it. I know why. Okay. Because we're passing in the timestamp that it's running on. It's going to have the same effect either way. So just running it here doesn't save us. Is that the only reason that's used right now? Okay. Let's take a look at the encoding. So we just want this. Hi, Jonathan. Welcome to the stream. Just doing a little bug fixing here. How are you doing? I fixed it. Yeah. So fake fixing a bug and then really fixing it means we get 2 commit bumps in a row. Aren't we lucky?
Citizen.
Okay. Back to our front end code. Oh, I'm glad you're finding it interesting. I was a little worried that the benchmark, performance debugging was a little boring to watch, but it's a lot of up here stuff when you're doing that. Yeah. Okay, I kind of need the author field to be giving more info. I need the URL.
Citizen.
Okay, now let's check up on that unread state. find out why our unread notifications count seems to be coming back 0. So if we set that to undefined, what do we get? So it seems like count might just be broken. Might just be broken. Yeah, I think that's just the old implementation. So we need to replace that with the count notifications. There we go. And that actual count should be 2, 3. Okay. We'll check on that. So the count is totally off. Okay, there's a couple of things amiss here. First of all, get notifications cleared at seems to be just giving the current date consistently and the current time. I don't know what it's giving me. It's just giving me a different value every time. Am I calling it repeatedly? Oh, I'm on the notifications page, so actually I am. Okay. So that mystery is solved, but now why is our count wrong? Probably because of no. It seems like the after parameter, it's just not being respected. Let's see. That looks right. So the sorting is correct. I wonder why our count is coming out wrong. It's all coming from the server. Sort of confusing. We're counting after 215051, and that's at 214300. The key is F ends in, okay, so FF080 BBB, that's 25, okay, and then 9. It's less. So it shouldn't be coming out at all. So the comparison's correct. So I think what I'm doing is I'm confusing after and before. I think that is actually what I'm doing. Yeah, that is what I'm doing. They're separate. When I'm counting unread notifications, I actually want before, not after. Yeah, at least that makes sense. Nothing worse than having a bug that you just can't wrap your head around. so that's before handled. And then in the notifications API, you just need to add support for before. And then over here, we just modify that to be using before instead of after. And it's still broken. No, I've got them exactly reversed of what they ought to be. That one is definitely after. The other one is before. That's what's going on. This one should be before. And yet it's all still wrong. And now my pagination is broken. Something is totally screwy here. Pagination is definitely before, not after. Unread notifications is after. So I'm very sure of that. So now if I look at the code for fetching these things, after means, yeah, I've got these reversed. Do I? Yeah, I've got these reversed. Unless, of course, the reverse parameter means I need to reverse them, which does not. It works. Thank God, I was going to have an aneurysm if I had to think about that anymore. Okay, just need a few more notifications to test with. That's notifications working. Good deal, we're back to our ground state.
Citizen.
So I have to read me to citizen, right?
Citizen.
Okay. Good stuff. Citizenry is underway. So next up, we'll probably want to, I think I'm going to call the stream there. Frankly, I'm surprised I managed to do as much as we did after how tired I was this morning. So I'm glad about that. I think probably tomorrow, the next step will be we're going to set up a second dev server, the dev2 localhost, and start testing out interactions from citizenry to the multiple servers. And we'll probably need to go ahead and get the HTTP GET routes for pulling information from servers that are not your own. And then I think it's Tuesday right now. It'd be cool if we could get a testnet day, like where we sort of get together on the stream, maybe on like a Saturday, and people who want to volunteer to run servers can, and we all just see if the network works, and then kind of debug live. That would be a pretty cool thing to do. So maybe that's what we'll aim for with the rest of the week's work, is getting the UI. Yeah. So we'll prep for. Do I have anything blocking that? Any scheduling conflicts? Let me check. Don't think so. Nope. So, yeah. So we'll, on the stream leading up to Saturday, basically prep for that, get all the UIs in a place that is ready for the test net. And then on Saturday we can all kind of say something in the lead up so people know that it's kind of an event. And the UI won't be much different than this. I'll just include some facilities for, facilitating, the testnet aspect of it. Maybe I'll get some kind of master list of like servers that people are running that the citizenry will tell you about or something like that. Or a master list of users, something like that. and we'll just see how this thing runs. And if you want to run a server during the testnet, go ahead and, you'll want to register a domain name ahead of time, so we can spin up your VPS quickly. So in the lead up to there, I'll get some test servers running on a public server and basically go through the testnet stuff on the stream. Any kind of tooling that we want to have ready to help us diagnose problems, probably want to get that ready. I think that's a reasonable goal, is just prepping for the testnet run on Saturday. That'd be an exciting milestone to hit. And if we can get to that point, then really it's going to just be about improving on the UI and any kind of internal details. A lot of the hard stuff is done, so that should be fun. Great. Okay, anybody have any questions for me before we call it a day? Play you a little. Sounds out of tune. I'll sing my answers for you. Put in some music. So the performance stuff, we got it into a better place than we were previously by, let's see how I can talk and play a chord progression at the same time. We got it into a slightly better place than before. There's definitely some improvements to get picked up on with batching some of the secondary indexing stuff. That's probably where I'll go next, because batching puts in Hyper-V is significantly faster than doing them sequentially. There's like a batch function. So there's some work to be done there. There's definitely some work to be done making sure that the secondary indexes that are created in the background are not being scheduled in the middle of important work. But some of the baseline stuff looks about as optimal as it can get. So I'm afraid I don't know the Weatherman sea shanty. I'm sorry that Google keeps on filtering out people's comments. Are you trying to link me something? Is that what's going on? If a subdomain would be okay for a server. Should be. Should be no reason why it couldn't work. Yeah, I'm familiar with the that one, right? Right, that one. Yeah. I wonder if there's any musical accompaniment to it. Okay. Well, thanks for joining the stream, as usual. Hopefully, let's see, tomorrow we got the DAT consortium meetup at noon, right in the middle of my streaming time. So I'll either, I don't know, We'll see what's going on. If I get started early, we'll start early, and then we could always do 2 streams in a day. There's no reason why not. So I might just do that. All right. Hey, Jim, I didn't realize you were with us. All right, have a good rest of your Tuesday. I'll catch you tomorrow. Later, everybody.
Citizens.